right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the possibility of getting overwhelmed by this action figure collecting hobby. Collecting action figures can be very frustrating and cause you a lot of stress if you allow it to. And this isn't to say that there is not a lot of joy and fulfillment and feeling of accomplishment that you can also have with this hobby. I think it just comes down to how you let it affect you emotionally and sometimes even financially. I've said it before. If you don't do this as a job, if you're not a YouTuber or an action figure reviewer, or you own a toy store or anything like that, there's not really any big reason to get emotionally involved. If you are not a sick and disgusting completist, as I am, there is definitely no reason for you to be trying to pick up every single figure that is released from McFarlane for the DC Multiverse. And it goes without saying that even me, I have had to modify the way I collect, my collecting habits over time. My rule used to be that I must have at least two of every figure, one to keep in box and one to open up for the collection. Now, this has changed over time. Sometimes I would even buy three, four, even five of the same figure, and some figures were relegated to just buying one. And that is where I realized that I was going to change the way I collected. Now, this basically came down to adjusting to two different things, and that would be basically the price of figures and the price of goods as a whole. But it also had to do with the availability of the DC Multiverse figures. And these were two big factors that allowed me to change my rule of how I collected to where now my rule is that I must have at least one of everything released by McFarlane. Now, this means that I don't necessarily have to open up everything. I only open up the ones that I really want to open. And sometimes I keep them in box and I don't need one out of box. This has to go with like the Jokerized versions. I relegated getting them just one and keeping it in box. Wasn't a big priority for me as a collector. And sometimes you just got to come to the realization that you're not going to be able to find everything. You're not going to be able to get a good price on everything. And sometimes you're going to have to play the long game, and that is waiting for a good price, waiting for a good deal, and just hunting online or in the wild until you come across the figure that you want. In fact, I still need that golden Superman, that like statue kind of version. Never came across it, never ordered it, and I am keeping my eye on it online, but I'm just waiting for a good, reasonable price. But that's the other thing you have to remember is that when it really comes down to it, if you're not able to get a figure, it is definitely not the end of the world. And in the end, this is what I'm trying to say here, and that is that depending on how long it takes for you to get a figure, depending on the price you are willing to pay, don't ever get overwhelmed or think that your collection sucks or it's not even worth collecting anymore. It just comes with the territory. Now there are collectors out there that are must-have die-hard collectors like my boy D Hunter. I mean, that guy goes to the extremes and he is definitely a hardcore collector. But for me, in the end, we have to keep it in perspective, and that is that these are plastic figures that we're collecting. They're not anything you need to survive or anything that is really worth losing any sleep over. But I do feel like a lot of the times you see people in the community, in the comments, when they see pictures of people finding things that they cannot find. I mean, right now people are finding stuff at Target, at Walmart. I haven't come across anything pretty much new, but when it happens to you, it is a good feeling. But you have to remember that it's nothing to overblow. If you see somebody find something online in the wild, just, sometimes you just have to let it go and don't think about it that much. Now, I do feel people's pain because a lot of the times McFarlane has made some pretty weird decisions about what are exclusives, knowing that a figure is going to be very sought after and then not making enough to spread out. But I think in reality, nobody ever knows what figure is going to sell out. It just depends. Like right now, I just took a look at the Deadshot, which I thought was a pretty good release from McFarlane, but you can still get it relatively easy online, as well as people are starting to find him in the wild. And this just goes to show that you got to pump the brakes sometimes and not lose your cool. And I get it. It is very frustrating to see people finding stuff that you'll probably never see in stores. But once again, I go back to the same thing. Don't let it overwhelm you. It's not anything that's going to change the world. It's not anything that is more important than your immediate family or immediate friends. All of those things should be much more important than these action figures that we collect, which I know some people get really emotional, but you got to keep it under control. I mean, in all honesty, there's people out there, and I've said this before, we are very lucky to be worried about what McFarlane releases, what action figures we collect that we can find in stores, what a toy company decides to do. There is literally people out there worried about how they're going to live, how they're going to eat. And we're over here crying because McFarlane made a figure, a red platinum exclusive. And to me, it's just not worth it to worry about things like that in the end are never going to actually matter. So honestly, this is just me giving some advice, and that is that collect what you can find, collect what is reasonable for you and your budget, but never go to extremes, never pay triple for a figure, never think that you'll never have a figure. Eventually, you should be able to acquire it for a reasonable price. Nothing is worth overreacting or losing your mind. Keep calm and keep collecting. So, anyways, guys, that's it. Let me know what you think down below. Catch you in the next one.